I'm a shorter than average girl from down under, and this is going to be the final Narnia video, the one talking about the final installment of the Chronicles, The Last Battle. This one could also potentially be classified as controversial, given that the Koloman return, and it also takes a lot of inspiration from apocalyptic Christianity. As a child, I never really liked this one. I felt like it was a bit too dark, a bit too complicated, and it didn't have that really innocent feel that all the others did. However, as a grown-up now, I can tell you that this one is my favorite out of the 7. It feels the truest in my eyes. It reflects a lot about reality and how hypocrisy will bring the end of humanity, literally and metaphorically. A person who only thinks about themselves and tricks others for the sake of self-gain can't really bring any good to the world. Hypocrisy is a huge theme in this one, as well as many others. It is well worth a read, especially if you're really into philosophy or any form of ideas about what the hereafter will look like or symbolize or represent. And it is a finale. This is going to be the end of Narnia and the characters that we have grown to love in the previous 6 installments. Now, if you're only here for the book review, you can go to the time shown on the screen right now or the timestamp in the description, whichever suits you best. But for now, let's talk story. Has like 2 plots working simultaneously. So let's start in Narnia. There is this ape called Shift and a donkey named Puzzle, and they're wandering in Narnia's far west when they find a lion skin in the river. Now, Shift verbally abuses Puzzle and convinces him to put on this lion skin and pretend to be Aslan so that they can make Narnia a better place. But in reality, Shift was conspiring with a Koloman named Rishtata Khan, who was tasked by the Tizrock of the time to conquer Narnia. And so they end up using Puzzle to convince all the other Narnians to work for the Koloman. The horses become normal horses that the Koloman use, the dwarfs create all the armor for the Koloman, and they even start felling the dryads for wood. Now, this news spread like wildfire in Narnia. Aslan's back, and this ended up reaching King Tirian, the last king of Narnia, and his unicorn jewel. But as they were making their way to see Aslan, the centaur Runewick stops them, telling them that the stars are not showing signs that Aslan's back, and that the stars don't lie, but the tongues of beasts can. When they go to see for themselves, they find that conditions are worse than they believed. Shift has convinced the Narnians that Aslan and Tash, the god of the Koloman, are one and the same, and that they should call them Tashlan from now on. He also told them that Tashlan is very angry with the Narnians, that he's been going super soft, and now is the time to lick them into shape. He also convinces them that given that the Koloman follow Tash, and Tash is Aslan, that everything that the Koloman are doing are right, and so the Narnians should help them. King Tirian begs for help. Help from the king and queens of old, help from those who have come to Narnia from another world, and help from Aslan. Just then, Tirian goes into a trance state and he sees 7 people standing, looking at him, just before he passes out. Now we go to Earth. Professor Kirk has a bad feeling that something's not right in Narnia, so he sends for all the people who've gone to Narnia to meet. And they all end up coming except for Susan. So only 7 people end up meeting. Diggory Kirk, Polly Plummer, Peter, Edmund, and Lucy Pevensey, Eustace Scrubb, and Jill Pole. When they all meet up, this is when a hologram of a figure begging for them comes up, and so they recognize that yes, Narnia is indeed in trouble. But there was no way for them to get there. Only Aslan can bring them from their world to Narnia, except for one situation. In The Magician's Nephew, they could use the rings to get into Narnia. and the rings are in London. And so they all head onto a train to find the rings. Just then, the train gets into an accident and smashes into the platform. As soon as this happened, Jill and Eustace find themselves in Narnia with King Tyrion, and this is where they decide that they're going to fight back. Unfortunately, as they're preparing and sending word to Runewit and Cair Paravel to get an army ready, Farsight the Eagle comes with the bad news that Cair Paravel has been taken over by the Clawmen, and that Runewit has been slaughtered for spreading lies. Now the only thing that they could think of is exposing Shift to the Narnians, hoping that those who are working for the Clawmen would rally up and fight for their cause. So they end up freeing Jewel and Puzzle as well, who feel so guilty for having been tricked by Shift and causing so much trouble, hoping that they can leverage the fact that they finally have the fake Aslan. But Shift and Rishta are clever. They tell the Narnians that a fake Aslan is on the loose, a donkey in a lion skin, and if they see him, they must kill them, because that goes against Tashlan. So they foiled King Tyrion's plan to expose them. But just then, the real Tash comes out of his lair and finds his way into the stable, without the schemers knowing of this. And so Rishta Khan, to scare the Narnians even more, was telling them that if they don't believe him, they can go into the stable one by one, ordering Clawmen on the other side that if a good Narnian, aka conspirator, goes through the door, that they shouldn't kill him. But if a bad Narnian, one that is loyal to the king, goes through the door, that they have to end them. The first to volunteer to go is a conspirator, a cat by the name of Ginger. However, when she goes through the stable doors, she absolutely freaks out and comes out of the other side as a non-talking beast. This terrifies the Narnians because now they believe that they've actually angered Aslan, and it also goes against the plan of Rishta because now he doesn't have anyone to prove that following the Clawmen is actually good. He tries to send Shift in there, but Shift ain't gonna have it. And this is when a Clawman by the name of Emeth volunteers to go in. Given that Tash and Aslan are the same, then him going into the stable shouldn't be a problem, but instead prove Rishta point right, that the Clawmen are with the truth. However, when Emeth goes through the stable tours, he never comes back out again. This is the opportunity that King Tyrion, Jewel, Eustace, and Polly take to storm Rishta. And as Rishta is fighting with Tyrion, he invokes the name of Tash. To which Tash responds by coming out of the stable and gobbling him up. Tash starts to turn towards the Narnians, and this is where they storm him into the stables, and King Peter, King Edmund, Lucy, Diggory, and Polly come to help. The 4 newcomers that have just crossed the stable doors find themselves in a green field. So this is where the other 5 explain to Eustace and Jill that on the train platform, they had all died. And now they're here, waiting to go into Aslan's country. And this is when Aslan comes, telling the Narnians to come through the stable doors so that they may be judged. And this is where he starts to differentiate between the good Narnians and the not so good Narnians. They find Emeth there, the Clawman, and Aslan tells him,
I take to me the service which thou hast done for Tash, for I and he are such different kinds that no service which is vile can be done to me, and none which is not vile can be done to him.
Because Emeth was such a devout believer and actually a good person, he was allowed into Aslan's country. On the contrary, some of the Narnians didn't make it. The dwarfs were all huddled up together, absolutely terrified. When Lucy went to them, she was confused. They didn't seem to see her, nor did they see Aslan, no matter how much he tried. And so he tells her that they have made a trick of the mind which makes them blind to me. And so they're never going to be able to leave that state of fear because they have blinded themselves and they think that they're in complete darkness. As soon as all the Narnians had gone through, Aslan wakes up Father Time, and so starts the end of Narnia. The eastern seas swamp all of Narnia to the west. The mountains start to crumble, and the sun itself becomes cold, just like the son of Charon in The Magician's Nephew. Narnia was dying. And when Father Time finally took away the sun, that's when Aslan tells Peter to close the door. And then he leads them all to his country, a country which looks exactly the same as Narnia, but better. Professor Kirk describes Narnia as a shadow or a reflection of Aslan's country, and goes as far as saying that this is basically like Plato's cave. And so, when any creature of any world in this multiverse dies, they come to this one place, Aslan's country. And as they look at Aslan, he's no longer a lion. And they don't tell us what he actually looks like. Go figures. But yeah, there is so much to cover when it comes to this book. It is so deep. I mean, it's basically a reflection of the apocalypse or the end of time, as well as the Day of Judgment, all put together. But of course, in a fanciful, magical version. So I guess we can talk about the two separately, starting with the end of the world in one, and then talking about the hereafter in the second part. When it comes to the end of the world, C.S. Lewis is trying to tell us that following the truth is going to be hard. It's going to be lonely and requiring a lot of sacrifice, just as King Tyrion finds himself at the end. But we shouldn't lose hope in that situation when it seems that we're all alone and there is no way to fight against hypocrisy. We can still invoke the names of those that God loves in the name of God Himself, because only He and those that He sends to us will be able to help us in a time of such trial and tribulation. This isn't necessarily just referring to the last moment of our life, or if we're ever existing in the apocalypse, but any trial or tribulation that we may face, because we never know which moment is going to be our last. But in all situations, in all ideologies, in all beliefs, the biggest enemy will be the hypocrites. They are mixing up some kind of truth with a lie so that it suits their own personal agenda. And if you want more information about hypocrisy, then I would recommend the video on Pinocchio on this channel, which will be linked up here. But essentially from both sides, those who believe in Aslan and those who believe in Tash, the two villains were hypocrites. For the Narnians, it was Shift, Ginger, and the dwarfs, and for the Kalormen, it was Rishta-Taka. And we know that Rishta-Taka was a hypocrite because Tash ended up killing him for what he had done to his name. Now let's get to the Day of Judgment. Aslan's the one who judges the Narnians, and those who are good are allowed into Aslan's country. Those who are not stay in this field. However, they don't see it as a field. For them, it's darkness. For them, it's terrifying. There are also other fates which are unknown, even to C.S. Lewis, but there could be implications that some are taken to Tash's realm, which aids the theory that Tash is meant to be a representation of the devil. But given that this wasn't in the book, we're not going to talk about it. Instead, let's talk about the positives. Let's talk about Aslan's country, the kingdom of heaven, that people who believe are sent to. Now, we are also told that doing good, even though you don't know it's for the sake of God, will also award you the ability to live in Aslan's country, just as we see with Emeth. Now, as for heaven itself, it's described to be familiar to what we know, but a lot deeper. Like the layers of an onion, the further you walk into it, the more you discover and the sweeter it is. The professor describes the fruits of Aslan's country to be so good that fruits of any other world will taste like medicine in comparison. It's also here that they see all their old friends. Almost every character that we have come to know and love ends up residing in Aslan's country, with this figure Aslan, the manifestation of all goodness in every realm that exists, as their guide. Unfortunately, the only person who hasn't made it to Aslan's country is Susan Pevensey, most likely because she wasn't on the platform when all the other seven passed away. So her fate is unknown. Will she be able to get into Aslan's country in the future? Only time will tell. I mean, what we know is that at the moment, she doesn't believe in Narnia anymore. She doesn't believe in Aslan. But that's not to say she doesn't believe in the equivalent of Aslan on Earth. Potentially, if she does, then she may be afforded the ability to see everyone in Aslan's country. This book can be quite the trip, honestly. I mean, the dichotomy between the first part of the book and then the second part, with the first being so devastating and causing so much anguish, and then the second being so enlightening and beautiful and magical, it can get quite emotional. And that's what I really like about it. It actually sets you up to feel how beautiful the end result is, and essentially paints death as a really beautiful thing, which is a positive given that a lot of us are scared of death. But it is an inevitable truth. The last battle has the heaviest and darkest themes of all the Narnia novels. It talks about the end of days, the apocalypse, doomsday, and the day of judgment. However, given that a lot of the characters that we've gone through on the journey have always had positive results, have always had a positive relationship with Aslan, we ultimately see what the good side of all that looks like, which is a very magical and emotional thing. This isn't a book that I would personally recommend for kids, but as a child grows up and loves the characters of Narnia, this will definitely be a good one to read to give a child that peace and conclusion to wrap up the entire Narnian adventure. As an adult, I really enjoyed this book because it tackles down on the really, really heavy topics and what we should be doing in our life to make sure that we're living by the truth. It's my favorite book for a reason. And that's it, folks. We've finished the Narnia Chronicles, all seven books, with us ending at the last battle. I really hope that you enjoyed this series. If you did, please give a like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Share it with any other Narnia enthusiasts, and I hope to see you next time for another review. Be brave, be happy, and be kind, and we'll catch you all next time.